Let's talk about these answers. Here's number 2. Question A is not a statistical question. It's talking about the first frame. Frame is kind of like a time that you are bowling. You know how you kind of take turns when you bowl. Frame is your turn to bowl. So it's only talking about one time that you are up. So there should only be one score in that frame. You're not going to have varying scores. Here we're talking about 10 frames or 10 different times that you get up to go throw the ball. So your scores are likely to vary because you're doing it 10 different times. Number 3, let's see. Question A, how many hours of television did you watch each day this week? How many hours of television did you watch on Saturday? Question A is statistical because it's going to supply you with a number, and that number, it can vary from day to day. There might be days where you watch a lot of TV. There might be days where you watch less TV. It depends on what day of the week it is, what activities you have going, if you have school or not, all these things. Question B only asks about one day. So it's going to give you a number of hours, but it's only going to give you one number of hours. And it's not possible to have a statistical question that is only going to give you one number because it won't vary. It won't be different. Question 4. Now, let me just say this first. In order to get the correct answer here, you need to have a capital letter and a question mark. That's what questions have. So if you don't have that, I would mark your question wrong. Next up, you don't have to have exactly word for word what I have here. This is one of a lot of different questions. So if the teacher recorded tests of her students, what is a question the teacher would probably ask themselves after they recorded all the tests? This is a question I ask myself every single time I record your grades. What was the highest test score recorded? And then the other obvious question that I think that if you were a teacher you would ask yourself is, what was the lowest test score recorded? Remember, this is that highest, lowest, biggest, smallest, what we're calling our superlatives. If you're ever looking to write a statistical question about a data set that you already collected, the previous questions, these were before we collected the data. This is after we collected the data. We have tests on scores for every kid. This is where we come up with that biggest, smallest question. Or you might say something, how many kids got a 90% or above? How many kids got an 80% or above? Those would be statistical questions for this. It's that different type of statistical question that we ask after we have collected data and we have it in a data set. So it would be impossible for me to list every possible question that you could have written down here, but I said a few right there that hopefully you had. Again, capital letter, question mark for number 5. You need to have those things. A car salesman knows how many of each model of a car was sold in a month. So the model is like the name of the car. It's not necessarily the company. So if Jeep would be like the company, the model would be like a Wrangler or a Grand Cherokee or something like that. It's the specific name of the type of the car. So a question that a car salesman could ask here is, which model was sold the least? And the opposite of that would be, which model was sold the most? Then we're using that superlative, that most, least, those two opposites. We can't necessarily say, how many Chevys were sold or how many Wranglers were sold or how many Civics were sold, because we don't know necessarily what car company we're even talking about here. So I think pretty much just go with which model sold the least, which model sold the most. There might be some other answers in there that you could have possibly had. We could always talk about it next time we're together, or you can send me an email if you're not sure if your answer is correct or not. For number 6, we have the city tracked the amount of waste that was recycled from 2000 to 2007. Write a statistical question about the situation. So here is one with a capital I and a question mark. Make sure you have capitals and question marks. In which year was the least amount of waste recycled? Nice. Good. That is a perfect answer. It uses our superlative least. And the opposite of that would be, in which year was the most amount of waste recycled? Those are your kind of easy go-to statistical questions. Just, pick those superlatives. Biggest, smallest, heaviest, lightest, tallest, shortest, or in this case, most least. Can't really go wrong with that. And the daily low temperature is recorded for a week. So the low temperature is the lowest temperature during that 24-hour period. Write a statistical question about the situation. So here is an example with a capital W and a question mark. What was the highest daily low temperature? Okay, that's good. What about the opposite of that? We could say, what was the lowest daily low temperature? Highest, lowest, they are superlatives, they are opposites. That is pretty much the way to go here when you're trying to come up with a statistical question that you're going to ask based off a situation where you have already collected data. In this situation, we have collected the data already. Now we're going to ask a question about that data.